Welcome to the episode. We are on the journey of the Future of People initiatives. Today we're going to take on a pretty interesting question. Should marketing function become a critical partner and enabler of HR? And we have an amazing human with us, Esther, the CMO of Wrike, W-R-I-K-E. Pretty awesome, powerful work management platform. You guys should check it out. But before we do, as with every episode, I'm going to give a little context before we get started. This is a journey. These are not isolated episodes. So about 7 months ago, time flies when you're having fun, we started this journey, the future, to answer the question, what is the Future of People initiatives? And we spoke to folks in HR, people analytics, change management, L&D. And it was about December, January, we met two really interesting folks. One is David, head of talent at Spirit Airlines, and Beverly, the head of HR from PayPal. And both of them said, Adam, we got to meet the pressure to consumerize the employee experience, consumerize HR products, reorient around the user, not the organization. And I began to ask, who knows the most about consumerization inside organizations? And the thesis was the CMO knows quite a bit. We sent out 900 emails, received various responses ranging from a Fortune 500 CMO's team said, we're not aligned to having this conversation today. But then we met some CMOs who said, absolutely. Let's have a conversation. So Esther, welcome to the conversation. I'm anxiously looking forward to your feedback. So welcome.
Thanks, Adam. Glad to be here.
And I'm just going to dive right into it. There's something you said, I have a stake and input, right? The more I think about the CMO role, the more I just common sense, they're part of the team. So what did you mean by it? How do you view your stake and your role at the highest level, just to introduce your point of view?
Sure, absolutely. And I've been in marketing for over 20 years at a lot of high growth companies. And I've always been a firm believer that marketing should be a culture bearer within an organization, both internally and externally. And so, as I think about the role of marketing specifically within an organization, I really structure my teams to focus on kind of three areas as we build out the marketing strategy for an organization. And I actually think there's a lot of synergy and shared learnings that can happen really between an HR or a people organization as well as a marketing organization. And so the three pillars of how I usually build out my marketing strategy, one is build at the foundation, which is we need to have a really clear understanding of who are we targeting, the operational aspects of getting really data driven to make sure that we can bring our message, our solutions to the right people at the right time. So one is the build the foundation. Two is around telling the story, making sure that we have an understanding of how do we position ourselves externally, how do we have a unified message internally, how do people know what we do as an organization, as a product, as a solution. And it's really important that you have a very clear, concise, and high impact message out in the market. It's the only way that people are going to understand who are you and why should I care. And then the third is around really, again, understanding that customer profile. Who are the markets that you should be going after? And then how do you actually dominate that market? How do you actually bring your solutions, your message to the right people at the right time so they understand, again, why should I care and why should I buy? And I think that those actually resonate really well in conjunction to internal employee experience and employee enablement. I think those are actually things that HR can benefit greatly from, both if you have a really strong marketing structure, but also if they follow the similar path of build the foundation, have a really clear understanding of the data-driven aspects behind HR processes around how do you engage with employees at what stage in their employee life cycle, and how do you deliver the right messages and the communications and the right things that they should know and they should be trained on. How do you get the operational infrastructure in place to the telling the story again? How do you ensure that you have a very unified message in terms of who you are as a company, what we're focused on, how we're driving the business forward? And then again, that market domination in a sense of understanding who are your ideal customer profiles, who are your profiles within your internal or external audience, and then how do you make sure that you're delivering that right message at the right time to each of those employees. And I feel like there's so much linkage between the employee experience and the customer
So much.
experience. And so, yeah, I'm a huge advocate of HR and marketing working hand in hand as strategic partners.
You know, some of those points you mentioned in our first conversation kind of blew my mind. You know, common sense isn't common action. Like, this makes sense. Even let's start with the idea of a unified message. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Most organizations do not have a unified message. Most organizations have almost like a wall between the external and the internal. So when a new website or a new marketing campaign is launched, right, they may see it for the first time when they're watching Super Bowl. Look at that. That's my company. Right. How cool is that? Well, I didn't know that was coming. Right. I didn't know that this is where we stood on these topics. And also there's this question of kind of, you mentioned culture. I want to double click on culture, right? Tell me more about how do you view marketing, right? The CMO's role internally in culture, because culture, there's a case to be made from CEO to CHRO to, in some cases, chief people officers I'm talking to. In some cases, they say it's the manager, right? It's your direct leader. How do you view your role in culture?
Yeah. Like I said, I think marketing should be some of the absolute culture bearers of an organization. And the way that I think about culture is, first, there needs to be a level of purpose for
Mm-hmm.
companies, right? And for employees within companies. Because culture is not just happy hours and fun social activities and a lot of company swag. Uh, Right. And a lot of people actually do think that that is culture.
Mm-hmm.
And when they think
Mm-hmm.
about culture types of initiatives, it's, well, let's do a fun happy hour every month. And that's not culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Culture starts with purpose of, why are we here as an organization? What is our company mission? But also, what is the buy-in of each employee, as in terms of what each of our employees are doing to continue that mission, right? And is that it, do each of our employees have a sense of purpose of what we're doing, how we're making an impact in the organization, how we're making an impact outside of the organization and around the world. And so I think it does start with that employee mission and purpose. And again, if people don't know that, if people don't know what the mission is or what their place is in an organization, it makes it much harder to honestly have true culture within an organization. And so, again, I feel like marketing can be a huge proponent of that in terms of, how do we communicate that mission internally and externally? How do we create that repeatability so that it is absolutely in the minds and the
Mm-hmm.
hearts, not only of every, customer and every prospect, but also in every employee, so that there is that unified understanding of, here's what we're set out to do. Here's why my job is so important every single day that I come to work. Here's how I contribute. So that's some of how I think about culture. And then obviously there is the fun aspect, and there is the, commonality aspect of people working together and enjoying what they do and feeling like they're working towards, together towards a common goal. And that does bring then into, what a lot of companies have as like OKRs or strategic initiatives or
Mm-hmm.
goals, corporate goals, again, of what are we all working towards and how do we make sure that there's not completely different priorities, across departments that make everyone's job a lot harder to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you do want to make sure that you have a unity in terms of, not just we all are working towards obviously a larger, higher level mission, but also we have the tools, we have the understanding, we have the goals that are all in lockstep with everyone else in the organization, and we have a true understanding of what it is that we're trying to accomplish this month, this quarter, this year. And so, again, I think that there's a lot that marketing has, as part of being a strategic driver of an organization. It's one reason why I'm in marketing, is because I don't believe that marketing is just one part of, will we just do brand or we just do revenue, leads and pipeline generation. I actually believe that we should be in lockstep as a strategic partner with every single department, every single part of the business, working in conjunction together again to see to achieve our business goals. And a lot of that does have to do with, again, how are we keeping employees in, not only accountable, but in the same level of priority and visibility around all of the things that are happening. And a lot of that does revolve around communication and, goal setting and all of those things. So again, I think marketing can be a big driver of each of those functions.
Yeah, and you said same level of priority. Love that. How do we care about our employees as much as our customers, right? And if we do, what is our effort to communicate with them that's relevant, that's timely? But I do want to just check in on the guardrail, like on a little pressure point. Like some folks believe the CMO, just stay in your swim lane. Or the CMO themselves says, I'm going to stay in my swim lane. It's easier that way because once you move from CX to any EX, you're in a different waters in most organizations for, to some extent. Others believe, should the CMO own the consumerization of the employee experience? And I don't mean the employee experience itself. Not, the CMOs are not making the case to say we're going to get into compliance and benefits and compensation. No. They're saying specifically consumerization. And I really liked your point of view because I think you were pragmatic to say, well, look, as a CMO, I've got a lot of I have responsibilities.
Yep.
So maybe give the audience just a sense of that guardrail as you see it. Where's the right place? And maybe even short term, or do you think it's going to change in the long term? Like, let's have your view before we jump into more of what can we learn from CX to bring to EX.
Agreed. Yeah. And I like the idea of guardrails, and part of it is because we can't own, one person can't own everything necessarily. And a CMO, if you think about the level of prioritization for a chief marketing officer, it really does have to revolve, number one, around revenue growth. And it's something that a lot of marketers right now are feeling that squeeze, that pressure, which is cut budget, cut resources, focus, and prioritize. And for the most part, it has to be around how does marketing drive revenue for the business and business growth? And that is first and foremost. And so when you think about kind of all of the other things with limited time, limited resources and budget, that has to be kind of central in terms of how do we continue to drive business growth? I would say the employee experience is a huge driver of business growth, right? And so I think, as you think through what does that look like in terms of what is the purview for marketing? How do we continue to drive business growth? What is the most important, uncuttable type of, budget item, as well as level of strategy? Let's continue to drive the leads, the pipeline, the programs, the campaigns that continue to directly affect sales and directly affect revenue growth. Beyond that, right, again, and I would think of it in terms of kind of our overall, my three kind of pillars of marketing, which is the last one is really, bringing your solution to the market to drive revenue. That should be first and foremost. But then ancillary to that and making sure that that's also part of it is that telling the story. You have to have awareness. People have to know who you are and understand, kind of why should I care in order for them to actually then go to, a buyer-centric mode and then actually start to purchase. And then beyond that, you do need that operating infrastructure to be able to appropriately make the right decisions and be able to point in the right direction. So you really do need all three. And I would say that employee experience, making sure your front lines are enabled with the story, with the go-to-market approach, with making sure that they understand how do we sell, where do we go, what kinds of tools can we utilize, but not just at the sales level and the front line level, making sure that your recruiters in HR also can communicate the appropriate message of, again, why is your company important? Because we have to hire and retain top talent, but also from a legal standpoint, also from a product development standpoint, right? From a customer experience and customer support standpoint. Again, everyone understanding, here's what our company does, here's why it's important, here's how you contribute to the larger picture. Those are all really, really important. And I think marketing doesn't necessarily need to be the main driver, right? Or the
Mm-hmm.
only driver. We can be a strategic partner to
Mm-hmm.
HR or someone who maybe this is their first and most important priority is how do we continue to attract, retain, right? Develop our top talent.
Mm-hmm.
If that's their purview, marketing can come in as a strategic partner to say, hey, let's work together to get that to move that forward, while keeping for marketing our highest priority, which is revenue growth, in
Mm-hmm.
mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not one or the other. I think it has to be a joint approach, and it has to be something that you can't just put to the back burner hoping someone else will take care of it. It is something that I think marketers should be actively contributing and participating in, and partnering with their HR counterpart to do that.
Love it. And I think the way you just talked about the consumerization of the employee experience, we need to think about specific elements of it, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
recruiting, onboarding,
Yep.
learning and
Yep.
development, performance management. It's really kind of thinking about the cost the way we used to think about still do, but we are much more developed in the way we approach onboarding of a customer to meeting them where they are and looking at their experiences. Did they log in? Did they not? Did they try certain features? Oh my goodness,
Mm-hmm.
we're super scientific and very prescriptive. How do we do the same things for the employee experience? And then also you mentioned data driven, and tell me if you agree with this. We briefly mentioned this before. I've been pushing myself to simplify how to approach consumerization of the employee experience, just pushing, because everything's so complex. It feels like I'm getting lost in so much possibility. And then I came down to data nudge. Like on the
Mm-hmm.
data side, we need to understand their experience, and understanding experience today is looking at data, unifying data from various sources. And why a nudge is because, and I've been in a nudge world for many years, but it's because getting through the noise, we're just so busy. We're not going to read a long PDF, especially the new generations. I'm not going to derail us into that discussion. We're not going to watch a long video. All we have an opportunity to do in a very similar way as we do with customers. Esther, do you agree? Do you see the same way? Is there a modification you would make to this?
Yeah, no, I think it's hugely important that we're considering the amount of kind of, I guess, stress and just pressure that obviously we're putting on all of our employees and our workforce to have to navigate multiple systems, multiple tools, uh, multiple types of consumption in terms of education and training for compliance, but also, to do their job effectively. Uh, at Reich, we've actually done a study that we call the dark matter of work, where just like dark matter in the universe, where 95% of matter out there is invisible, we only know 5% of what's out there. It's the same in terms of work, where there is just a lot of invisibility of what's actually happening in terms of work. And one of the stats that we've actually seen is 70% of employees are feeling that stress of having to juggle multiple tasks, multiple systems, multiple applications, having to learn all of these tools, while also again having to consume, what is it that we're doing? What do I need to do to be successful in my role? How do I learn the product? How do I learn how to sell? All of these things for their individual tasks. And, to your point, I think that we need to do a better job. And as marketers, we think all the time about the buyer's journey or the customer journey. Where are they in their phase of even being a customer? Are they learning the tools? Are they learning the solution? Or have they fully implemented it and they're, looking to expand, or they're looking to continue to build out more and get more sophisticated in their usage? We should be looking at it in the same way from an employee lifecycle standpoint of where are they in their journey? Are they brand new onboarding? They're learning all new things, or have they been here a little bit, but maybe they're in a different type of role? Maybe they need to add additional skill sets to continue their career progression and development. And then, in terms of that consumerization, I think we rely on the same types of tools every single time to talk at employees, in a sense.
Totally.
Here's an all hands, here's a training, you have to do a course that's maybe a little bit interactive where we ask you some questions just to make sure you're paying attention. And that's not how as we as consumers know, that's not how consumers at all, digest information or even, make decisions in terms of doing research. Or learn a new skill set. Everyone is using these bite-sized, videos, and they're utilizing, trusted types of influencers or people that they trust to do their levels of market research or to understand something new or to learn a new skill set. Like, so many people are going to YouTube to learn how to do something, whether that's like how to fix something in their house or actually how to be a better, employee or learn a new skill set like social media or whatnot. They're learning from their peers and they're learning from video oftentimes, and it's bite-sized video forms of content, and we're not doing that as internally within businesses when we're looking at training and developing and even just providing more information to our employees. It's always a kind of one-sided kind of conversation, which is unfortunate.
Totally, and that's the opportunity. I think the challenge is, around the employee experience and our desire to create more productivity, and also that
Yes.
if you think about where we've been from an engagement or disengagement standpoint for so many years as a world, like as a state of the world, it hasn't really improved. Billions of dollars have been spent. All kinds of technologies have been created. I would be curious to know how many videos are sitting dormant and LMSs and
Absolutely.
other platforms that have been created. And now you go and you put, to your point, on YouTube, I was picking a monitor this weekend and I was like, do I get the iMac? Do I get the studio? And then I'm like, I'm going to check out a video. And one of my measurements of which video I'm going to choose was the duration of the video. I was like, 5-7 minutes, I can't commit to that. I'm looking for something that's 2 to 3. Just get me straight to it, but give me a
Yep.
video as opposed to a piece of content. So where I'd like to go next is really just to think about the HR department, the team. What will they need, right? Because if we're talking about data to nudge, that's not a small change for them. This is they're in the business of, okay, we've got L&D, and I've spoke to a lot of brilliant people in the world of L&D. By the way, amazing people that enter that world because they believe in human potential, because they want to further the human potential, but they're all realizing the same thing we're discussing now. They're also consumers of content, and they're saying, hold up, we got to do something different. So how does do you see a world where an HR team kind of has a marketing like team where there's data folks, there's analytics, there's nudges, and then if yes, you mentioned data driven, I think almost everyone in HR says, and they are data driven, but the kind of data they're looking at is not the kind of data you're looking at. You would go beyond. You would say, how many impressions did you receive? How
Yep.
many call to actions? Like how many view? Like there's so many more data points that you as a marketer look at that they would probably at this point just kind of scratch their head and go, wait a second, is this where we should be allocating our time? So what does a HR world look like to learn from the world of customer experience?
It's a great question, and I love it because I agree. This is where marketers live and breathe, right? We have to be hugely data oriented in order to actually understand, again, what stage is your buyer or your customer at? What's the profile? What are the other channels that they're looking at and reading? What's the demographic and how do they consume information and content? And then how do I find the channels, the content, the strategy to get in front of them, get their attention when it's a hugely saturated environment, disrupt them where they are, and then feed them content that's immediately going to capture their attention but resonate with them in terms of what's their pain. That was top of mind. And then not only that, get them to a place where they need to look for a solution like yours. Hey, I get your pain point. This is top of mind. This keeps you up at night. We're the solution, right? You need a solution, and then we're the solution, and then you need this solution right now. And then actually mapping all of that, all of those touch points across different channels, across their journey, and actually mapping it to, did we actually get you to purchase, right? Which is the end goal, not just all of these touches and we got the eyeballs, right? We got the visit, we got the click. But no, we need to actually get it to purchase and then repurchase, right? And then continued purchase to get to lifetime value. And then we have to map it back to spend and channel optimization. I mean,
Nailed it.
it is such a sophisticated game. but it's something that we live and breathe. And I absolutely think, how effective could HR organizations be if they had the same mentality when it came to, again, attracting, retaining, developing our employee base and the top talent? Because thinking through it in a way of, obviously you could start with life cycle. That's the easiest place to start. Of you have a brand new hire, or you have someone who's been here and maybe they're starting a new role, or they're developing, or they're going into a manager level position and they're going to start to manage people. But what does that look like in terms of life cycle? I think there's segmentation that needs to happen, not just in terms of role-based type of training of, this is a skill set you need for a salesperson versus an accounting person, but actually getting into segmentation of, geo-specific, right? Of like, there are different aspects of your role based off of where you are, which region you're in, but also based off performance, right? So really looking at like, who is your top talent? Who are your A players that you absolutely need to invest in to continue to retain them and engage them and develop them and move them up and through the organization? Or even looking at, how do we get some of our low performers, right? Is this something where we're not setting them up for success and we can maybe get more out of these employees, especially when productivity is the name of the game right now? Of, we have a ton, probably the majority of our workforce and our employee base, they're not that engaged. They're not doing A-level efforts, right? It's like, they're not putting above and beyond level efforts. They're just coasting, and they're just waiting to kind of be told what to do. How do you get more out of that workforce? How do you get them engaged? How do you get them developing? How do you showcase to them that you're investing in them and that it's worthwhile for them to stay at the company and continue to lean in and continue to grow, because we have a whole career path for you, right? Like, really thinking through that employee base and then putting in the programs based off of, what you see, what's kind of the next thing that you want to do, not just eyeballs, not just I'm checking the box because I have to do this, training, and I'm going to do the bare minimum and I'm just going to watch something else while it plays and then I'll answer some
Exactly.
questions, right? How do you get past that check the box mentality and then get it to a place where, oh no, they want to be invested in this learning and development because there's incentive, because there's a goal at the end of it where, for marketing, it's a purchase. And for this person, maybe it's a promotion, right? Maybe it's how do we get them to the next area and what's in it for them, right? And so I just think there's so much goodness in really being data driven and then actually creating programs that can scale, so that you're not having to do a lot of one-offs, but that they're broader based programs that you can segment your employee base and get them into top tier talent, that you can continue to grow and develop.
It is so refreshing to have this conversation with a marketing pro who's looking at the challenges of EX and applying the same logic. And you said the words mindset. We got to bring the mindset. So walk with me here for this example. The CHRO or the chief people officer, someone in charge of the employee experience, sits down and says, we have a goal. Let's say the goal is on the learning and development side because they are seeing a gap, a skill gap in their organization. Okay. Then the next question I think often is asked, the role of the manager in the employee experience. I mean, when we think about the population, we think about segments, managers are critical part of the journey of anyone within the organization. So the way that I've been thinking about it is like, okay, they bring you into a room and they say, okay, we have this many managers, 500, 1,000 managers, and our goal is to promote the learning and development, the upskill, we want to accelerate upskilling. How we're going to do that is we'd like our managers to have more conversations with their teams to encourage it, to share that they care about this, and maybe there are incentives in place. It seems like then we talk about touch points. We almost want promotions. Like, do you want to learn more? And then anyone who clicks who's curious. Now, hey, there's a baby, like a little micro step involved. There's another micro step. And we are leading them down this journey as opposed to an announcement and the email gets deleted, or a 30-minute conversation and they forget about it because there's a million things going on. How do we then think about that as a funnel toward a specific call to action, which will be someone starting that learning and development journey and graduating from it? Am I going too far out, or does this make sense? Does it resonate?
No, I think it makes sense, right? Because again, just like you're thinking through in terms of journeys of employee, customer, prospect. You are trying to get them to the next stage. What is the next stage in terms of their level of maturity or sophistication, or really mastering a skill set, getting to the next, up leveling of their career. I think that is how we should be thinking through, partially because that is, it does put you in the employee's mindset, which is what's in it for them. And I think, again, too often it's this top down, I'm talking at you, I just need you to do this training so I can check the box of being a client, or get you, past your onboarding or past your boot camp. And so that we can just get to productivity and we can just get to results. And again, I think you need to flip it. Just like marketing, we're always thinking about our buyers and our customers. You have to put yourself in that customer's shoes, or else they're not going to get. Why would they click? Why would they engage? It's this exact same thing with an employee. And really thinking about, okay, if you're segmenting your employee base, who are the ones that are ready for a manager, or that is their next step, is either a career up leveling or it's a people management type of skill set. Why, and I think that you do need to kind of segment your employee base, because some people they might not want that, right? Maybe they don't ever want to be a people manager.
Totally.
Or maybe they're fine kind of at that same skill set, and really understanding, okay, well then what motivates them, right? Is it, if it's not internal promotions, and if it's not up leveling, maybe it's the work-life balance, maybe it's their paycheck, and whatever that is. But actually starting to understand, what is it that motivates your employees? How do you continue to showcase growth for them? Because there is a level of growth, even if it's not a promotional, it could be lateral, it could be just a net new skill that they're really interested in, right? Those kinds of things. What are those things that actually motivate them, and how do you create the programs to get them to that next level?
Awesome. Where I want to take us back to, I think it was there 15, 20 minutes ago. And then as I think about it, if I was listening, whether it's on the HR side or the marketing side, I think the question that if it's not the CMO who's running these campaigns, which is what we're saying, you're not going to run them. You're an advisor. You are a stakeholder. You're there to support it because your eyes on the prize here, but you're a deep partner. So are we saying that the CHRO or Chief People Officer, that they're going to go out and hire marketers? Do we think there's a world in which employee experience leaders are now bringing in marketing professionals inside their organization? Or are we saying that the marketing organization is doing more training, more knowledge sharing, more like here are best practices, or perhaps lending some of their team members some resources? How would you approach what I think is a humongous gap in skill in HR to do the kind of things we're talking about from a practical perspective? It's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and also it's baby steps, right? Because you can't boil the ocean. You can't assume that you're going to create this, perfectly well-oiled machine overnight. I think it could be a combination of both, obviously, depending on, the level of priority, the level of resources, and kind of how important this is for an organization to start down the path. I think absolutely marketing can start as advisors, and they should anyway, right? As a chief marketing officer, I care very much about the again, attracting, retaining, and developing my team, and ensuring that the marketing team that I have is fully motivated to continue to drive towards results. And so this is important for any stakeholder, but also at the same time being able to advise on just some knowledge sharing of, here's how we built out some of our infrastructure, here's how I think it could relate to employees. I do think that there could be some level of hiring, almost like a hybrid type of role of someone who might have a little bit of that marketing mindset, but also some of the people the people oriented aspects, again, depending on what the resources are that you have, but maybe even hiring just operational HR operations types of people who can start to at least build some of the infrastructure around, segmentation, around what that looks like, and then looking at your learning and development teams and bringing on some of the capabilities around. I know that there's a lot of, kind of UX, there's marketing, there's content creation, there's a lot
Totally.
of hybrid types of roles that you could look at, and skills that I think span multiple worlds, in a sense, or multiple functions, that you could really start to think through. But I think, honestly, even just flipping it on its head a little bit and not just going, here's the typical HR prioritization of, we're going to do, here's my recruitment team and here's my benefits team and here's, and structuring your HR organization in that way, but actually thinking a little bit more of starting with the data, focusing on what data do we have and what are some of the priorities that we know we want to make sure that we're focused on for this quarter, this year, and then starting to build out a roadmap of what does that actually look like for us to start to build out more of a programmatic type of approach when it comes to engaging with our employees and developing our employees and getting career pathing for our employees, and really thinking it through it in that way.
Super helpful. And then the mindset side, I almost feel like you mentioned multiple times touch points and running campaigns. It's almost like getting it to a level of, if you're in HR, right, and you're also a consumer outside of HR, just ask yourself the question, like, look at your world and how touch points are magical, how they're anticipating you as customer, and then folks working at your organization are probably feeling, not my words, one of the guests is like they work at a DMV. So like, hey, do you want to shift that? Do you want to evolve that to being a little, maybe you're not going to nail it on day one, as to your point, it's baby steps, but do you think like even just getting folks to think about touch points, maybe that is the linchpin I'm looking for the mindset linchpin, like what is that single thought that can begin for the folks in the EX to start to learn from CX? What do you think is the linchpin?
For me, yeah, I mean, again, I would bring it down to what is the end result that we want, because that's where marketing starts, for example, which is I need a certain number of people buying, and a certain amount of revenue that's coming from those customers that would be purchasing. I would look at HR in the same way, which are what are the most important priorities and outputs, right? In terms of end goals that we would want out of our employee base, and that could be, you know, and you could divide it into, we want to attract, we want to fill all of our roles obviously with top talent. So what does that actually look like? We want to retain our top talent, and what does that actually look like in terms of not just retention of those employees, but also actual up leveling and building out the career path so that they have a place, and they can see a future at the organization. There is obviously like skill set training and just getting people to a place from an L&D standpoint of, I want you to actually be able to understand obviously what you need to do in your role baseline, and be successful kind of on day, 30 or whatnot, so that you can actually be productive in your role. But then what does that look like to continue to drive more and more productivity? So I'd look at specifically what are the end goals, and how do you actually get there? How do you start to build out, again, to your point, maybe touch points or programs where, if our goal is to get to retention, or even, a number of promotions within top talent, by the end of the year, or getting people kind of, maybe you have a junior level manager team, right? Kind of first time people managers, and we're potentially not seeing the up leveling of skill sets, or we're having a lot of issues in terms of retention or whatnot, or even productivity, even segmenting it to those very specific either at-risk employees or top talent employees, or what does that look like, and then starting to build out the programs that you can run potentially at scale. and starting to build that out. And then again, what is the output? Are you actually achieving the result that you want with those programs? And then doing testing and iteration of an optimization of, that's when you can start to look at various touch points or various types of content, various formats, are we getting, again, focusing on the end result, not just check the box, we got a training out, and this many people, we had 90%, completion. Because that's oftentimes what I see with L&D. It's just like, I'm looking at eyeballs and I'm looking at completions, but you're not actually looking at knowledge retention, or did it actually change behavior? Did we actually see the performance or the productivity improvement with that training, right? So I think it's flipping it on its head a little bit and looking at like, what are we actually trying to achieve and accomplish with this program?
The thought that I had as you were speaking, just connecting the dots, it's like, what's your objective? Like retention, as an example. Okay. What's the segment that you're looking to focus on? You said, hey, first-time managers as a possibility because that impacts them. It impacts their teams. There maybe is a risk. Yep. Okay, cool. Then we could say, of those high-performing, low-performing, maybe even we look at collaboration data. Are they via Microsoft Teams or Slack or something like that, where there's other signals that are coming in about, their days. Are they connecting? Are they having one-on-ones? Okay, cool. Then what's your call to action with that group? Well, my call to action with that group is X. Whether it's one-on-ones, whether them taking on a learning and development program, whatever that is, that now became your North Star to run a specific campaign in order to improve this objective by having this funnel that you've created. But also in that funnel, there's value to visibility, awareness. Even if they don't do those things, they'll now know they're available. And maybe they'll do them next year, because we understand from all the marketing, it's not always about just a call to action, although that's important at measures, but we also measure all the things to get to that level. So fascinating. Was that an accurate way to connect the dots that you were just discussing?
Yeah, love it. Love how you simplified it.
Wonderful. Well, listen, I feel like we could go on for hours. And of course, we took on a really big question today. So I really appreciate you jumping in. Like, what's the role of marketing, in partnership with HR? It's like a monster topic. And I think these are some of the early conversations. We're going to dive in deeper and deeper into every point. But for those who are listening, whether on the marketing side who want to lend a hand, or for folks in HR who want to reach out to the marketing, like what advice would you give? We mentioned baby steps. I think we mentioned a few, but maybe there's another baby step in your mind where you're like, hey, go do this.
No, I think it all starts with a joint ownership and accountability and, concern for obviously overall business objectives and growth. And as you're thinking through it, HR can learn a lot from marketing. And I think, again, the what's in it for marketing to help out with HR, it's, well, marketers need to retain top talent. We need to get more out of the limited resources that we have. And so how can marketing be a partner and an advisor and a support function to HR? And that oftentimes you don't see, right? You usually see HR coming in and saying, how can I support your objectives, et cetera. But I think you could flip it on its head a little bit and look at it more of a joint ownership and accountability. And so, I think baby steps, marketing, going to HR and saying, hey, can we provide just any sort of, knowledge sharing, research, understanding, operational help, et cetera, around, or even like campaign ideas and, internal program ideas, that we can help to continue to drive the right culture, the performance-driven output, focus, results-driven type of behavior that we know we want from our employees. And then also from HR coming, to marketing, and being able to say, hey, we have some of these priorities. We would love to learn from you, or we'd love some ideas or some support on how can we get this into a program that can scale. Utilizing data. How do you do audience segmentation? Like actually even thinking through it in the form of just a brainstorming session around, and again, the marketers do this all the time, of like, what's our biggest market opportunity? Where should we be headed? Of that audience segment, how do we go deeper where we believe that we can actually get the most bang for our buck and really target that very, specialized audience? What are the ways that we go about it? And, what's the type of content? You could do the same thing with HR, but look at it from an employee-based standpoint of like, again, look at the mass, the entire employee base, and then where do we think is maybe the biggest opportunity for us if we just put a little bit of focus that we could really, see a lot more performance or output or benefit, or investment in those employees that we think could actually really benefit the organization as a whole.
I love it. Brainstorming session. Let's just one baby step. If you're on the HR side, reach out to the marketing folks and brainstorming session. Let's do one. Or on the marketing side, offer one. Who knows what will come out of it? Esther, brilliant feedback. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. This was awesome. I'm sure on behalf of the audience, just appreciate you joining the conversation, and I hope to speak with you soon.
Yep. Thanks, Adam. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Over now.